I'd like to call this regular meeting of the Board of Selectmen for Monday, January 4th, 2021 to order. First, Selectmen's report. It's a little bit longer tonight, so bear with me. It's been a little while since we've met and lots going on. So first, I want to wish everybody here on our board, attending the meeting, and everybody watching from home a very happy new year. I think we were all super happy to turn the page on 2020. And I know that 2021 can only be positive from here on out. So I'm looking forward with optimism and with a great sense of opportunity for the coming year. COVID-19 update for today. As of today, there's been 724 cases reported to date from 517 different households in Darien. 693 of those cases were in the year 2020. 214 cases were reported for the month of December alone. November and December have seen the highest case counts since the beginning of the pandemic, but there have also been nearly 12,000 tests administered to our Darien residents in that same time period, in contrast to the 737 tests done in March and April together. Darien's positivity rate stands at 2.9%. Down from 3.6% in November. The state's aggregate positivity rate is 5.29%. Darien has had 25 hospitalizations, 4 of those in December, and sadly 7 deaths in total, 5 in April and 2 in the month of December. For those who follow the weekly updates that are posted on the Town of Darien website, please know that as the data is adjusted on a day-to-day basis, the data is corrected going back. So all the charts are updated to make sure that the cases and the tests are noted in the proper time frames. Health Department officials state that transmission is occurring within homes and as a result of small gatherings. Interestingly, a number of recent asymptomatic positives were caught due to the travel-related policy. Questions have arisen regarding Superintendent Adley's decision to keep schools in remote status until January 11th. Dr. Adley is very thoughtful in his decision-making and is guided by information about our school community members traveling, local and state case data, statewide trends, and input from the district health professionals as well as our local health director. These decisions are not easy, but I am confident that Dr. Adley and the Board of Education make the best possible decisions they can for the whole of the school community. Vaccine update. I know vaccines are on everybody's mind. So the Darien Health Department has received authorization to be a COVID-19 vaccine provider of the Moderna vaccine. We don't have the refrigeration capabilities for the Pfizer vaccine. And the health department plans to hold a series of vaccine clinics here in Town Hall. Last week, they ordered vaccine, but that order was denied because of lack of vaccine supply. Another request will be submitted this week. Clinics will be scheduled when we know the vaccine can be delivered. Currently, the only eligible recipients of vaccine during the state's 3-phase plan, we're in phase 1A of the state's plan, are healthcare providers, first responders who provide direct medical care, and residents of extended care facilities. All appointments for COVID vaccines are made through an online state portal. When you're eligible, you'll be notified by the health department and given instructions on how to access the online portal. The portal allows you to select a convenient time and a convenient location to receive your vaccine, not necessarily here in Darien. You can go to any available vaccine provider site that has an open time slot for you. All police and first responders, including Post 53, have been notified that vaccine is available to them at clinics throughout the state. Residents and employees of extended care facilities in town will begin receiving vaccine this week directly through an arrangement made with CVS by the federal and state government. Our health department will hold a drill this week to practice using the vaccine tracking system and logistics for the clinics that they plan on holding in Town Hall over the next few months. Future priority lists of vaccine recipients have not been released by the state at this time. Once that information is available, the health department will publicize it accordingly. Testing update. Just this evening, I received a notice that as part of the state's testing program, Connecticut's testing partners are providing priority access for child care, early childhood staff, teachers, and first responders. Priority access is intended for staff who need to get tested quickly in order to ensure their workday is not interrupted, but it's not intended for the family and friends of said workers. You can find a testing site at the ct.gov/priority workforce test. That takes you right to the 211 state testing site databases. A quick perusal of that shows that close by to Darien, it is the Community Health Center sites and the new semaphore testing sites in both Stamford and Norwalk that are these priority sites. Priority service is being provided in a number of ways, such as extended hours, separate lanes, personal scheduling support, or a combination of those options. Each testing site may have slightly different processes. You can get further information from the provider of each site. Please also note that additional sites, including hospitals and pharmacies, may include additional priority access for first responders. Moving on from COVID, we got news over the last few days that in the 27th Senate District, our State Senator Carlo Leone has resigned his Senate seat to become a special advisor to the Commissioner of Transportation effective immediately. I want to thank Senator Leone for his 9 years of public service to the residents of Darien. A special election will need to be held on the 46th day after the governor issues a writ of election, which is anticipated to be signed this week, which would mean there will be an election sometime in February, called for Districts 2 and District 4 in Darien. Depending on who runs for that 27th Senate seat, other special elections may be required. On December 28th, the representative town meeting approved the reissuance of the tax deferral program facilitated by Governor Lamont's executive orders 7S and 9R. Kate will update you on the status of the deferral applications to date. Residential, business, and nonprofit taxpayers have until February 11th to apply to defer any municipal taxes that became due and payable on January 1st, which includes property tax, supplemental motor vehicle tax, and CPACE loan repayment. Approved applicants will have until April 1st to pay their taxes without interest penalty. Applications are available on the town website under news and on the tax collector's webpage. Contrary to recent media headlines, tax deferrals are by application only. Taxpayers must prove a qualifying hardship to be approved for the tax deferral. That's the end of my report. Kate?
If I can make one quick correction,
Sure.
you have to apply for the tax relief by February 1st.
Ah, thank you.
So briefly, budget reviews began this morning. Jamie, Jen Charneski, and I have been meeting with each department head, reviewing their budgets. We will continue with that for the next several days. And I think it's going well so far. We're at a point where we looked at the parking permit situation and felt it was time to make a decision if I was going to ask you to further extend the 2020 permits or begin issuing the 2021 on April 1st as we had previously, you had previously voted, because there's a process. We have to send out the letters. We have to give certain deadlines. So the letters would need to go out soon if we're going to hold to the April 1st renewal date. So I created a survey that our parking administrator emailed out to all train station parking permit holders. We had 950 plus responses, which was really tremendous. Over 75% of the people responded that they are currently not commuting at all. We asked them if they're not commuting currently or commuting less than they normally have in the past, would they renew their permit in anticipation of needing it in 2021 or 2022? The overwhelming response was yes. They anticipated needing the permit in the future and they would renew. So the renewal process is beginning soon. The letters will be going out likely next week with initial deadlines in February, in March, with the final deadline to renew of March 31st. As Jamie said, the tax collector is getting applications for deferrals. She reported to us this morning that she's received 21 applications so far. That represents $216,742 in taxes. The total deferred for the July period was over $600,000 in taxes. And noting that they have until February 1st to apply, we expect the number, the 216 number, to go up. At this time, the majority of the applications are from residential property owners. We have not, just this topic from the past, we have not, nor have our attorneys, had any communications from Metro North regarding their desire to lease a portion of the Norotan Heights Railroad lot in some time. And as such, we are considering it to be a dead issue. And that's it.
Thank you, Kate. Board liaison reports. Why don't we start with Sarah? Do you have anything to report from Thriving Youth? No. Okay. David, how about you?
We have not met since last time I reported.
Okay, thank you. Kip. No, we lost you.
I'm sorry. I get it right. We met and reviewed the final of the contract subcontractor bids. They all have been reviewed and accepted. We have also considered some alternate items which we're about to agree upon. And we're in the middle right now of looking over the guaranteed maximum price contract from the ONG AP consortium. When it's all said and done, we'll be reviewing that and we'll have a meeting to approve the contract as if we accept it all. And we'll be back to you with a full report as to the amount and as to where we stand on all of the alternate items, which aren't many, but there's some savings we found as well, besides spending more money.
Terrific, thank you. And I know that Krista is on a bit of a hiatus in her liaison to the Pear Tree Beach building project. So I have asked her if she would provide some support in doing research on the grant and gift policy. So I'm sure she'll contribute to that discussion when we get there.
Absolutely, but just to clarify, I'm not on hiatus from the committee. The committee's on hiatus. I'm still a member of the committee. The committee, yes, though, on hiatus. Just to clarify.
Yes, thank you. And that'll be an item for agenda review. We should talk about that committee. Great. The next order of business is for us to move into executive session to discuss a personnel issue. So for those who have joined this meeting and those watching from home, hang tight. We will come back as soon as our executive session is over. So with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn to executive session.
So moved.
Thank you, Krista. May I have a second? Sarah seconds. Lots of feedback from somewhere. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that was unanimous. Terrific. We will adjourn and we'll be back with you shortly. Okay, thank you. We're back into open session, and we will continue with our discussion about the town hall hours and the modified schedule that would continue to be a Monday through Thursday work schedule for town hall employees. And I'd like to offer the floor to my board colleagues to make any further comments or ask questions about what's being proposed by the town administrator and our human resource director to continue the flexible 4-day work schedule. No comments, no questions? I think what I'd like to say to the public is that customer service to the taxpayers is of paramount importance, and that our desire to support the town administrator and human resource director's recommendation to continue with a 4-day work week in no way should impact negatively the delivery of service to the taxpayers. So to the extent there are specific service issues that need to be worked out, I feel confident that our professionals on this call and the town hall union will work very closely together to mitigate any of those issues. And really, as we've seen, and many of you articulated in our executive session, COVID-19 has really forced us in a good way to move services online. And we should continue with the objective of providing as much service in an online forum so that our taxpayers can really access services 24/7, making that walking into town hall necessity less of a requirement. There are many services that do require in-person interaction, and we will continue to provide those as the community needs. But, going to a virtual town hall model, I think, is great for everybody. Kip.
I'm sorry, Jamie, are we going on to this item right now, number 4, rather than going to the new business?
That's a good question. Thank you very much, Kip.
I mean, I'm happy to do that. I just want to know where we are.
I think you're exactly right. I need to ask for a motion to modify the agenda so that we can continue this discussion.
So moved.
Kip moves. May I have a second? Sarah seconds. All those in favor say aye.
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 Okay, opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Thanks, Kip.
Okay, I'd like just to say something here. As I said earlier, that I thought that the pandemic has forced us into, all of us, not just town hall, but everybody in business, into the world of the remote working. And I think this is going to be a great incentive to providing better services, regardless of what the hours are at the town hall. However, the fact is that this is this item has been a issue negotiated in a union contract as well, which is interesting to know. So that what our role as the board of selectmen is, in my opinion, is we are to approve issues that are of policy. This is an operational issue. We leave it to our hired people, specifically Kate, Laurie, and other people, to run the town. And this is their job, not ours. I think that this is an agreement they've come to and they've negotiated with the union. I think that we can feel comfortable as a board that services actually are being accelerated on the remote level rather than reduced. And I feel that this is a matter really for the management of the town, not of the Board of Selectmen. And I would be happy to say that I'm totally in favor of whatever decision management makes.
Thank you, Kip. Any other comments or questions on this item? One thing I'd like to ask of my colleagues is to please continue to give feedback to me and Kate. If you hear from the public on this issue, definitely want the feedback so they can continue to refine the services that we provide. Okay, ready to move on? Okay, then we will move on to new business. Item number 1, discuss the proposed grant policy.
So I gave you a draft grant policy. I reached out to a number of other communities to find out how they were doing it, how they addressed grants, if they had any policies, procedures that we could borrow from. What I found was the majority of them do things pretty much the same way we've been doing them, with a simple grant application. And the applications are quite often very similar to ours. I did find Norwalk had some more interesting procedures that they're developing now. They give quite a bit more than we do in grants, and I exclude the library when I say that. They're looking at their community health needs assessment and using that as a driving force, targeting the donations that they give to target what they feel are the greatest needs in the city. We don't give near what they do, but it was quite interesting talking to them. So what I did in this policy was trying to take actually our application and some of the things that we look at on that and put it more into a policy form than an application form. And David, you sent an email that had a really good point. My item number 5, what was it? Number 4, about the requested funding. What I was trying to get out there was, don't be asking us to provide 50% of your funding if we're not 50% of your service base. And then, so I think, you caught that my wording was didn't come out quite what I intended, but these were thoughts that I came up with on ways that could help you guide, decide to whom you would want to give grants, and it's a starting point for you.
Yeah, I really like this, Kate, and thank you very much. We've been going back and forth about a couple of things, and one additional item that I'd like to add to sort of this criteria list would be that the organization provides a clean audit, the results of a clean audit in order for us to consider granting. I want to discuss a little bit more that number 5. If we're asked to provide grant funding to an organization and that ends up, that contribution ends up being 49% of the agency's budget. At what point do you consider the agency to really be a department of the town? I think we need to sort of choose the right threshold here if we're looking at that kind of a threshold.
Right. So 50 was just a number, but there is an accounting standard, and I'm not going to get the number right because I don't remember the GASBs as well as I used to. But there's an accounting standard that says you have to include an outside entity as part of your reporting entity if you provide more than a certain amount of their funding, and it would have to be over 50%. If you have some legal liability for them, like if they did something bad, you had to pay for it. And if you have control over their decisions. So if we had seats on a board where somebody from the town could be guiding their decisions, you must, according to the GASB, include them as part of your reporting entity.
Okay, so that helps. I think that it would be worthwhile considering that a grant should be limited such that we don't impose a legal or financial liability on the town. by virtue of our grant.
Well, Jamie, is that solved by having less than 50%?
Well, I guess I'd like to hear a little bit more what those standards are, Kate, and if we could incorporate those standards so that we don't overstep that threshold.
Right, because I'll have to pull up the specifics of the standards, but it can be, maybe you're not providing a lot of their funding, but you direct their activities and you have the legal responsibility, so that makes them part of your entity. So it's not in all three, and it's something that the auditors usually have to take a look at and make an assessment of. But I can get that information and incorporate that. We also, number 7, that they should be willing to sign our standard grant agreement. I really do think we should have agreements with the various entities that we provide grants to. But that I don't think is something for a public discussion, because those would be basically contracts and negotiated individually with each entity.
I would agree. I think there's a couple words missing in that bullet.
There are definitely the word to sign.
Or to enter into.
Yeah.
Kate, I look forward to working with you a little bit more on this, but my question in the terms and the research you had done when you say funding, could you clarify, is that revenue? When you use the word funding, if I'm looking at their audited financials.
It would be the revenue to the agency.
Okay, regardless of source.
Regardless of source.
Okay.
That was my intent.
Okay, I didn't know whether we would look at just their individual fundraising as a proportion, but from your research, you found it to be revenue in general.
No, that's, from my research, what I find is people ask for the other sources of funding, which is what we ask for now. So that would be if they had a bake sale, if they charged a fee for services. You might have an agency that charges you a minimal fee for whatever service they provide, and everything else is covered by grants.
Right.
Sarah, did you have a question?
I had 2. One, David had mentioned, it's something we talked about previously, is at what point do we ask for updates? Do we ask for them quarterly? Do we ask for them semi-annually? Do we just ask for an annual report that says how they use the grant if they're reapplying? I think that would be enormously important for some of these. Now, some of these are smaller grants that we've given 1,000, some of them are 60,000, some of them are millions of dollars. So we have such a wide range here.
So my thought on that, and I had, that was something I had written into my proposal for what a grant agreement should look like. And that they had to provide a detailed accounting of how the funds were utilized within 30 days of the fiscal year end. I think they should, I'm trying to see if I had, I did want them to report back to us. I think what, I would say on that idea is maybe depends on how much we give you. A small agency that we're maybe giving $1,000 to, we don't need them to come every quarter.
Right.
But if we're giving them millions, I think they should be coming to see us more than just once a year.
I would say that you want to tie the application, what they're asking the funding for, and tying it back to an accounting of how they used it, to make sure that they used it in a way that was represented to us in their application.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I wanted to clarify right on the front end, thinking like of the community funder, how do they plan to use the money? And then again at the end to bring it full circle.
Mm-hmm. So I think this is a great start. Does anybody have anything else that they want to include in this, the drafting of our grant policy? I know the work will continue a little bit more research to be done. David?
I was just going to suggest to Kate that in item number 5, you mentioned the GASB language for the requirements to prevent us from incurring any liability for the operations of the grantee. There might be a way to help protect the town by incorporating some reference to those GASB standards in number 5. We'd have to figure out what the right way to word that is.
Yeah.
But just to make sure that we specify specifically that we intend to not trip those limits, right?
Okay.
Yep, or it could be a separate bullet in and of itself, whichever works better.
No.
Yeah, whatever
I
works
agree,
best.
the addition of that is very important.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else on that item?
Just for my education, there's no role for the Board of Finance in the grant or gift policies.
I think there could be. Why not?
I actually would like us to consider that once we have a draft that we all seem to like and feel is comprehensive, I'd like to pass it to them for their review and input.
Okay, good.
Well, it clearly would be a terrible situation if we approve a budget with grants and move it along to the Board of Finance who disagree with our grant. Would be awkward, to say the least.
Yeah.
Well, even if we have a policy, and even if we approve a grant, that doesn't mean the Board of Finance will also approve that grant.
Right. That would,
Yeah.
that would be a
But
shame.
I think as long as we're putting a policy in place and we're sticking to the, to the metrics and the criteria, at least we have something to lean on in terms of why we moved it forward.
So it'd be good to see the grant agreement that you've mocked up, Kate, or we could talk offline about that.
Yeah, I'm happy to send it out. I just don't think it's something that should be discussed in public because they would be contracts.
Mhm.
So I think, my view is we would be approaching each grantee and saying, these are the things we want you to agree to in a contract. It's a negotiation.
Is there another thought I have is how the way in which the town would communicate with the Darien organizations that this is an option, that we are issuing grants. I'm thinking of if a new organization comes up, how are we facilitating this whole process?
Well, we don't do outreach. We have not done that. We don't have a pot of money that has been allocated to distribute as grants.
Or maybe just another item to say, something else to think about. Perhaps not outreach, but what is the way in which the community would know about this? Do we put something on the website, contact?
About the availability of grants or about what the policy is?
Both, the policy and that they may apply based upon certain criteria. Yeah.
So I think that's a whole nother discussion, Krista,
Right.
that we
I'm
should
just sort of
have.
throwing out some things that perhaps if people feel it's worthwhile, I think that would be another item to explore, not for discussion necessarily tonight. And I think number 6, I'd like to delve into a little bit more. How are we going to define the need being filled? I just talk more about that in the future. But I think it's an important criteria.
Different towns, obviously Norwalk and Greenwich, come at grant funding in a different way. They have allocated a pool of money, and I think it's probably more of a competitive application process for grant funding. That is not something that Darien has ever contemplated. That doesn't mean that we couldn't do that. Before we would go too far down that path, I would absolutely want to have input from the Board of Finance and the Finance and Budget Committee of the RTM.
Mhm.
Having said that, however, there may be organizations in Darien that that we think of that the way I think about appropriate grant recipients is like this. If that agency did not exist, would the services that they provide fall back to local government to provide in some way? And so there might be agencies out there that have never asked the town for a grant, that collectively we feel like we should be giving them some money because of the incredible service they provide, that we don't have to. So we can absolutely have that conversation and should have that conversation as we step into the budget process.
Sounds good.
Anything else on the grant policy? If not, then we'll move on to the proposed gift policy. I will just start out, a real general comment here is I think we need to define what a gift is. You know, a gift can be money, it can be a thing, or it can be a service that has a value. So I want to make sure that we include an appropriate gift definition.
So the gifts are all over the place in the code and the charter. I went through this afternoon, did a search on the code for the word gift. And if you leave out the, you know, the ethics code, which refers to gifts to town officials, it's primarily in 6 different sections. 3 of them are in the charter, 3 of them are in the code. And, you know, one of the things that we have is some commissions have the authority to accept gifts up to the level in the charter where the selectmen can accept gifts. Some commissions have the authority to accept gifts instead of having to go to the Board of Selectmen. Some commissions don't have that authority. I think we've seen that where, you know, the Police Commission doesn't have the authority to accept gifts. But the Commission on Aging, Commission on Human Services, Beautification, Monuments and Ceremonies, Park and Rec, all have the ability to accept gifts. I think my idea is that we should consolidate the whole gift rules, regulations into one policy. And I think we need to make it a little bit easier to accept some of the smaller gifts. I also believe we need to outline some of the reasons why, you know, why are there questions about why do people have to approve a gift? Because it's not just the money, it's not just the item, it's who's giving you the item. Is that a person or entity with whom we want to be associated? If they give us this item, are we going to have to incur additional operating expenses? Right. Will we have to replace it in the future? That's a decision that should be made. You know, you should be accepting the gift with all that knowledge. You should be making an informed decision. You know, somebody gives you a, I don't know, great new vehicle. Oh, terrific. But what happens when you have to replace it?
Right.
And then I think there should be some rules around when we spend them. If it's a cash gift, making sure that we're not doing something like we've appropriated, you know, $10,000 to do something, but really we're going to be spending $17,000 on it because we got $7,000 in gifts, but the people who approved the $10,000, you know, they're not aware that the other expenditures are happening. I think we need to make it cleaner and more transparent, so that when you accept a gift, you're considering all the all the things around it. So this is my starting point. You can completely disagree with me, but that's where I'm coming from.
No, Kate, I completely agree. I know just about everything you said. I don't know whether, I think the maintenance of gifts is also an incredibly important
Mm-hmm.
issue that needs to be always in the mind of any recipient. I like what you've outlined here, and then to get some continuity amongst the various commissions, I think is absolutely critical. What were your thoughts about giving an even lower level to the respective department chairs? You know,
What do you-
$500 or
I don't have an issue with, you know,
or you'd rather see everything?
I don't want a department, you're talking about having a department head be able to accept a gift on behalf of the department unilaterally?
Correct.
No, I don't like that concept.
I'm thinking, again, I'm carrying it over principal, superintendent, board on the school side.
You know, I don't know what the school side, but I feel, you know, I'm an accountant by trade, and you know, there are rules and there are procedures and there are controls to provide protection. And
Okay.
I don't like the concept of one person having the ability to accept something. You know, I could see a department head could accept with the counter signature of the town administrator or the finance director, something like that, but on their own, no.
Okay, no, that's fine. You know, you've been doing this, and I appreciate that. Obviously,
It's a legal and ethical protection for the town to have it run through the finance director and the town administrator. And also from, you know, sort of an accounting perspective, not numbers, but making sure that somebody that gives a gift is appropriately acknowledged by, you know, a receipt of gift, getting back to them. You know, you would never want to not acknowledge formally the giving of a gift. And that happens through the finance department.
yes, no, of course. Okay, no, you know your department's better. Absolutely.
Is there anything that Kate has proposed here that anybody wants to change or consider? Yes, Kip.
I think the numbers are too low, given the world that we're in. I would propose that the gift valued at $2,500 may be accepted by both the town administrator and finance director, and the gifts between $2,500 and $15,000 require the Board of Selectmen, and above $15,000, the RTM. I just think we've got to take into account the real world. Got to stop micromanaging little tiny numbers and get on to the bigger stuff. We have the requirement in place that both Kate and Jen would have to approve any gift up to $2,500. So we have the appropriate, if you will, hurdles in place. I just think we ought to make it more expansive. That's all.
I don't dispute that. You know, unless you're going to do a regular review of these policies and change these policies over time.
Yeah, and you know, the charter right now says that the limit for the Board of Selectmen can be updated. But you're limited in how much you can update it each time.
Oh,
And
right.
I don't know that it's been updated ever.
Of course
So
not.
what discretion does that give us?
10,000.
And then the RTM is going to have to approve this anyway.
Yes.
So-
Well, they would have to, yeah, because some of it, if we take out the sections that are in the charter or the code now, yes, that would require RTM approval.
You know, I would agree with it. It all should be back at one organization approving all these gifts, not various departments. One group approves them.
I would support your amended values, Kip. Does anybody else have a strong feeling for or against that?
I like the idea of the higher limits as well.
We're trying to get rid of, I think, just a lot of busy work, aren't we? I mean,
Right,
I
ultimately, the
understand.
RTM is going to pick the cap, so we're just going to have to work from that.
Exactly, but I mean, we can suggest as
Oh,
rational people.
Right. But what happens, Kate, in the scenario, people buy lunch for the police department valued at $200? How does that get What
So,
happens in that case?
that's technically not a gift to the police department. That's a gift to the police officers.
Oh,
That's a code of ethics question.
then we need to be clear on what a gift is. Back to
Well,
Jamie.
right, so back to Jamie.
Yes.
Yeah, this is a gift to the town.
Kate, just a couple of operational questions if I could.
Sure.
On number 5, we have a gift for a specific purpose. We
Mhm.
set up a sub account where the cash amount goes into, and then the funds are subsequently dispensed from that sub account. If we get to a point where the gift is the purpose for which the cash was given has been fulfilled, and there's a small stub amount left over in the sub account, how do those sub accounts get resolved on a periodic and systematic basis?
That's a great question. And I know that Jen has addressed that with gifts currently. So I'll ask her for the language. We
Okay, yeah,
did something, there's some kind of letter I think that she has put together that goes to the giver that basically says, if you gave us $500 and we only had to spend $450.
Yeah, I'm remembering that now too. That was in the Board of Finance discussions about the whole sub account stuff that they talked about before. And on item number 5, subpart D, I'm having a little trouble coming up with the exact right way to phrase this. So let me just go back to your example of the town funds $10,000 and there's a gift for $7,000, right? So they spend $17,000 in 1 year. In the subsequent year, the operating budget for that line item starts at the $10,000 number, not the $17,000, right?
No, what I was thinking of is, so if we have a budget for, say we have a budget for $7,000 for, what we had today? We had one of the fire departments wants a thermal imaging camera. So we have a budget item of $7,000, right? Say somebody gives them, and so $7,000 would not, under this policy, need to go to the RTM. Okay. So the concept I had was that if somebody gives them $5,000 so they can buy the fancier version, so now they're going to be spending $12,000. That gift should kick it to the RTM. That's what I was trying to get at.
The aggregate, the
Aggregate, right.
Yes.
The total amount to be
yeah.
spent is what should be considered. That you can't circumvent the process, the approval process by getting gifts and stuff.
I would agree with that
I guess
because
I was sorry, Krista, go ahead.
No, I was just agreeing. No.
No, I was just, I think I was focusing on the word operating or capital fund. When I think of operating, I think as the regular ongoing annual budget. And I wanted to make sure that the regular annual ongoing budget for the subsequent year doesn't reflect the gift amount from the
Oh.
prior year as well. The starting
Yeah.
point should be the operating budget number from the prior year.
Oh, yeah. That we wouldn't be
Okay.
mingling the funds. I just wanted to make sure that
Good.
people didn't avoid a part of the approval process.
They didn't want to game the system. Got it.
Yeah.
Happens.
So I'm sorry, then following up on the point then for the budgeting purposes year over year, how does it get reflected? I'm sorry, we have a budget of 10, we get another,
It's because we wouldn't deposit the gift into the operating budget. It would stay in the gift fund. So you wouldn't see it reflected in the operating budget.
okay, that's fine.
Perfect.
And
I think what David said earlier about clearing up the remnants is very important, because you could spend a lot of money in accounting, Blum Shapiro, et cetera, keeping track of all these little odds and ends. So you really have to have a mechanism for getting rid of them, so you don't waste your money on following up on that nonsense.
Yep.
Kip, I'm 99% sure that the policy at the Board of Finance for the capital reserve funds incorporates language that refers to that. When somebody establishes a gift fund, there's language that if there's a residual amount at the end below a certain level, it will get reverted to the town for other purposes. I'm 99% sure that's true.
That would
Yeah,
be great.
there's something like that.
Good.
and then Kate, again, what is the thought for those gifts under whatever the threshold was, 10,000 or 15,000? Would those be reported back to the Board of Selectmen? How would we keep track of that?
Well, the gifts that are too small to have to go to the Board of Selectmen,
Right.
we would be reported on in the finance director's quarterly report.
And the rest come before us anyway.
And the rest come before you anyway, yeah.
Okay, and that would be independent of any commission or body?
Yes.
So there's sort of a two-stage process, Krista. We approve the gift, and then at a certain level, the board or commission can expend the gift.
Right, I'm just saying, like in 5B, we don't have to, the Board of Commission who oversees it would accept it.
Yeah.
Not
Would
necessarily.
would approve the expenditure.
Expenditure, but we've already approved the gift. And they would have to expend the funds as we have approved receiving of the gift, right?
Right. So, one thing that can happen is you might have a number of small gifts for a specific purpose, to purchase a bench to put in the park, in a park.
Right.
So the gifts themselves don't rise to the level that they need to go to the Board of Selectmen to be approved, but the expenditure does, or it needs to go to the park. In that case, it would go to the Park and Rec Commission.
Right.
Kate, this will also apply to all of the gifts that are given to the Human Service Department, correct? How do we handle the aggregate of all of the gift cards, for example, that are given at the holidays? They're small individual amounts, but they aggregate, maybe to a level that would require additional approvals.
Or are those individuals kind of like back to the police lunch?
Well, no. I'd like time to think on that. Because
Okay.
it may be, as we're just the pass through. It's not a gift to the town, like all the goods, like at Christmas time, they filled rooms with all the, home goods that people brought in. those aren't gifts to the town.
I think,
So-
Kate, I think you're absolutely right. The town collects the cards and then distributes them to the individual residents. So we don't actually benefit from the existence of the
Right.
card.
Right. So I'd like to talk to Allie about the different kinds of gifts she gets and see what would need to be adjusted or added.
Okay, anything else on the gift policy draft? No? So next step, it'll come back in a semi-final form for us to vote on. Would that be the next step, Kate?
Okay.
Okay, great, thank you. Item number 3 under new business, discuss action items from the technology assessment report. You know, basically what we're seeing here is a recommendation from Kate and from the report itself that the next step should be a discussion about creating a steering and governance committee. And I think that's an excellent suggestion.
Right. So, you know, as I said in the memo, I'm already working. I've sent a draft of a revised contract to the Board of Ed and got their revisions back this morning. We're working with them on things like the universal updating of Microsoft products. We got the VPN in months ago. Working with Jeff on how we can put in tracking for the mobile devices, and it's a little bit more complicated than I would have anticipated. But I think what you need to start thinking about is the governance committee and anything that you want to put in the budget.
Yep.
So I took some time to read over this again. And I agree with what Krista said at the time. The most important thing, although they didn't call it critical, is really establishing a steering committee as to what you want to get done. Everything else is an issue here, issue there, issue there. If you start to try and solve each one of those things without a complete picture of what you're trying to get done, you're going to waste your time. So my point is, I agree that establishing a steering committee, governance committee, whatever you want to call it, that is charged with what they really want to get done in terms of the IT program for the entire town, Board of Education, town. That's the most important thing that can be done as a first step. I agree with what Krista said last time. That is the key.
So Kate, do you have oh, sorry, go ahead, Sarah.
No, I was just going to say, and following on Kip's point, because that really does need to get done first, I don't know that we'll be able to have budget recommendations that relate to this right now. And I'm wondering if we should leave something aside, but I don't know what a good question mark is.
Krista, did you have a comment?
Yeah, just one question, picking up on both those comments. But for Kate, do you feel that we need to retain Blum Shapiro in this process? Thinking of a budget, perhaps, issue to facilitate this next step of a steering committee?
I don't think so.
Okay, I mean, if you feel that there's the resources here,
You know,
or
the
for
steering committee,
consideration.
you know, if you think about it, I think you know what we need. You know, maybe if there was a point where Bloom would be helpful, it'd be in developing some kind of what do you call it, mission statement for the steering committee. You know, I have my opinions, but I think they gave us already an outline of. I'm sorry, I'm trying to find it in the report. looking for the actual, I mean, they already actually have given us things, what the steering committee should do. And I believe they gave us some recommendations as to who should be on it. So I'm not really sure that we need them. You know, they've already provided us the outline of the kind of people we need on the committee, and then what some of the duties the committee should have.
Okay, if you're confident, because I wouldn't be opposed to hiring them to facilitate an action plan, but you're,
I'm not opposed to that either, Krista.
yeah, I mean, I think this is just so important to move this along.
They can provide the momentum to.
Right, right.
I
Well,
wouldn't disagree. I wouldn't disagree with you, Krista, but remember, they put forming a steering committee as one of the less critical issues. And we think it's a very critical issue.
Right, right.
So the question might be, let's get the committee put together, think of what the issues they should be looking at, and then maybe looking at who we want to provide the expertise. It could well be Blum Shapiro's IT group, because they're
Right.
familiar with the process.
Right.
But I think you ought to
And
make
maybe
the first step on our own.
I just think that would be money just well spent to have an outside organization facilitate that for us, but yeah, maybe it is not Blum.
I would agree with Kip's assessment. I have no problem with spending the extra money because I think that it's a good idea to have someone facilitate and move the process along. I think Kate is pretty busy most every single day anyway. So running this project in addition to running the rest of the town is a big ask. But to Kip's point, forming the steering committee first, this decision about whether to hire Bloom or not for what purposes, that seems like that would be a steering committee decision,
Right.
much like any decisions that the Oxridge Building Committee made pertaining to the school.
I'm happy to pursue the Board of Selectmen coming up with recommendations on who should populate a steering committee and their mission statement. Let's get started.
Good.
Sound good?
Jamie, I think you have two members of the RTM here that I think may have come for this item. I don't know if they wanted to comment.
I see Lois Schneider and Mark Adeletta. You're welcome to unmute yourself and ask questions or comments.
Jamie, we're just getting started. Thank you for asking, but we're just getting started with our work and we wanted to catch up to where you are. So we will, if we have anything, we will gladly send it forward, but thank you for asking.
Okay, great. Okay. If there's nothing further on that.
Well, let me just, when do you want to target appointing a committee? So maybe if we give people a date, you can all be thinking of names or looking for.
I'd like to say give ourselves a month. So, 2 meetings from now, we have an outline of the folks, the positions, or even some people that should populate the number of people on the steering committee and a draft mission statement.
Agree.
Will the work of this committee be reflected in any way in this year's budget or this upcoming budget discussions?
I don't know, obviously we're going to form a committee and they're going to start their work, as we've already been presented the town administrator's proposed budget. So, I will leave it to Kate. We can discuss if we want to put any placeholder funding in the budget, or just ask the Board of Finance to, consider a request that may come their way.
Yeah, I don't think that there's anything, there's nothing that stands out in my mind is that we would be asking a steering committee to approve, but if we were looking to give them some funding to perhaps hire somebody to assist them, I can try and get a sense of how much that might cost and see if it's something we want to set aside or if we want to wait and ask Board of Finance to take it out of contingency at some point.
Yeah, just to enable them based upon the timing and the work that the steering committee wants to do. I'd hate to see them.
Have to wait. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Yeah. To keep this momentum going, as we say.
Yep. Okay.
Okay, if there's nothing further on the technology assessment next steps, we will move on to our transfer. That's for the building department.
Building department, right. So a few years back, as we approached the major redevelopment projects coming in, the building inspector asked us for additional inspectors to assist them with the increased workload. We approved 2 part-time positions rather than the full-time that he had asked for. Since then, we've been able to get by most of the time with just the 1 part-time. We've never been able to find a second part-time person. And we're at a point now where the 1 part-time position is not sufficient to fill the needs that we have. So the building inspector has asked us to move from the part-time. We have budgeted 2 part-timers, but we've only been able to fill the 1. He's asked us to make it a full-time position, recognizing that we probably will only have this position for 2 to 3 years. So that's the transfer request that's before you, to move the funds out of part-time and into the full-time salary to facilitate our hiring an individual inspector on a full-time basis.
Kate, just how is this done? Is it by contract, a short-term employment engagement, or
It would be a town employee.
A layoff at some point?
Yeah, it would be a town employee, and it was one of the reasons why I was reluctant to go to full-time when Pete first asked for it a couple years ago, because the concept of hiring somebody only to lay them off in a couple of years, I was not comfortable with. But I don't see that we have a whole lot of choice right now.
Well, in my experience being here for 12 years, we don't really lay people off, so it would be unusual that,
We have done. Maybe not your time, but we have done.
He's going to be busy for a couple of years, I can tell you.
Yes, that's for sure. That's for sure.
Can you clarify though, at the hiring, is it stated that this is a 2 to 3 year position?
I have no problem with stating that we don't anticipate it being a permanent, long time, that we anticipate in 2 to 3 years that the need for this position will go away.
Oh, okay.
I mean, there's always the possibility that in 2 to 3 years, something else will happen, and through attrition, we won't have to lay somebody off. But
David, do you have a question?
Just curious, the 37,000 that's being proposed to be transferred, that's the amount that was allocated to the second part-time person?
No, so we had 2 part-time people. So that's
right.
That's what we would need to move from part-time to basically eliminate the 2 part-time positions and create the 1 full-time for the balance of the fiscal year.
And that full-time would, this 37 would be sufficient to cover the incremental costs of healthcare and pension that wouldn't typically be covered under a part-time employee contract.
So that would be in a different line. and we feel we,
Okay.
so the pension wouldn't impact this year. Yeah. And
Got
we have sufficient funds in the health department, or in the health insurance account, to cover the
Okay.
addition.
Great,
Yeah, but
thanks.
to follow David's point, the budget for the two part-timers were 62,074, and they were basically at 0.8 full-time equivalents. So that if you put them at full-time equivalents, that would have been, it turns out to be about $74,000. So maybe there's $37,000 going over. It's just going from one account to the other in the same department.
Right. And just remember that, this is just it's for less than 6 months of the year.
Right. No, I understand.
Yeah. Got it.
Okay.
Any other questions about this transfer?
I'm sorry, just to clarify then, to move an individual to full-time, what are the other monetary impacts on the budget?
Well, increased, we have to pay the employer share of FICA and Medicare. They will become eligible for medical insurance and dental insurance, life insurance, and the pension.
Do you have a number associated with that for this individual? I mean, granted short term.
Off the top of my head, no. I can look at, let me see if I can pull up the budget.
Yeah, I would have liked to have seen sort of a comparison of the
Full cost.
full cost versus the cost of the part-timers.
Right, whenever we're adding a FTE, we always hear that it's more than just the salary.
Mhm.
We usually figure about 35% for benefits. That does include vacation and sick time, but that's the standard number.
What will the full-time salary be of this individual?
Was it 74? 72?
Hang on a second. I'm looking in the contract, trying to find. Building official starts at 77.
That's it.
Plus 35% of that number for benefits?
Right, that's a standard
For half a year.
calculation. I don't have the I believe it's going to be oh, here actually. So looking at next year's budget, assuming it's an employee plus one, and when we look at medical insurance, we make certain assumptions when we have new hires. So an employee plus one would be 27,000 approximately for the town share of the medical premium. If they take the vision, it's another $100, $2,000 seed for the HSA. But that's based on, like I said, an employee plus one. It'd be higher if it was a family. It'd be less if it was a single.
I think we're getting into the weeds here.
I agree. I just want to make sure that people are clear that there's a significantly higher cost to a full-time employee than what this transfer request suggests.
Right.
Exactly.
And that's why we made every effort to fill the need with part-time employees.
And I can vouch for that. Finding part-time employees for all of our inspector roles is very challenging. If there's no further discussion or questions about this transfer, I'll entertain a motion to approve the transfer of $37,000 from part-time salary in the building department to full-time salary.
So moved.
Kit moves, Sarah seconds. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, motion carries. Okay, thank you. All right, we have meeting minutes, regular meeting minutes of December 14th.
I got David's amendments.
Any other additions or edits?
Page 1, vaccines, line 3, it should be doses, not dose.
David beat you to that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And his other amendment was the spelling of Bob Solito's name in his report.
What did you get? Page 2, under storm shoveling versus shoving?
What makes you
Line
think?
Ooh,
three.
good one. I missed that one.
Whoa!
Where are we?
Line 3, page 2, storm, line 3. Shoveling versus shoving. That's a big one, I know.
Got it.
That's it.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve as amended the meeting minutes of December 14th.
So moved. Whatever.
I saw Sarah's hand first and then David seconds. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you. And special meeting minutes of December 14th.
Motion to approve.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second?
Thank you, Krista. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, abstentions, motion carries. Thank you very much. Kate, is there any public comment for this evening?
No.
Okay. Agenda review. One thing that I want to just bring up for a discussion at some point in the near future is the Pear Tree Point Building Committee that we convene. You know, there's been a lot of time that has gone by during COVID. Some work at the state level continues, but I just want to have a discussion and see where the Board of Selectmen is on, you know, whether we want to keep the committee in place, disband the committee. It's just been languishing, so thought we should have the discussion. Yes, Sarah.
What has the input been from either the committee itself, the Parks and Rec Commission, the RTM Parks and Rec Committee?
Yep, we'd like to get that input in for our discussion.
Krista, do you have any thoughts? I mean,
Yeah.
I appreciate the question, but since it's not on the agenda, I'd prefer we put it on the agenda rather than talking now. But thank you, Dave.
yeah.
But I think it's a worthwhile conversation, absolutely. I would support putting it on in a future agenda.
Great, thanks.
Anything else for agenda review? Yes, Sarah.
I would love to see if we can get David Knopf back. There's been some recent questions about just the COVID numbers, and I just want to understand kind of the reporting methodology. There were some numbers on Darien Times today that seemed kind of opposite to what the confirmed cases were on the state's website. As far as, you know, November seemed higher according to the state, rather the Darien Times, but yet December seemed higher according to the state. So I just want to get a better understanding of, you know, where all the differences in numbers are and where the confusion lies. And I know David has kind of given us some kind of brief understanding of, you know, I know when the cases come in, and Jamie, we've talked about how the dates in some of the cases, and some of the recent ones were a month old, and that's very difficult to reconcile. But if he could come in, because I would love to get a better understanding of where we are with the numbers. You know, we're not leaving this state right now as far as being, you know, COVID aware. We're all remote ourselves, and it's still top of mind.
I think it's great to have David come in and welcome his attempt at explaining the data inconsistencies. The one thing that would be important to share for the public this evening, since you asked the question, is the state's data, when they report it through the governor, his dashboards include presumed positives. the data that David reports is only test confirmed positives. So that's one explanation for the difference in the numbers, why the state's numbers are often higher than ours. But absolutely, let's bring him in. And if you have specific questions for David, send them in to me and Kate, and we'll try and get them answered since I know they're important questions.
Thank you.
Yeah, so you
I
know,
would totally support having him come in. I'd like to hear how Everpoint's going. Just an update for the board.
the next meeting is
Yeah.
the joint department heads meeting. So
Okay.
David will be there, and it's the
Great.
19th, not the 29th, as I type on the agenda, but we could have David be on your agenda, your regular business agenda at the next meeting.
Please. Thank you.
Perfect.
Or if he presented last and then rolled into our meeting, something like that.
Mhm.
Make good use of his time.
Yep.
Okay, and something that I'd like to put on the agenda for discussion is communications committee. Does the Board of Selectmen want to consider a communications committee? I know that idea was floated at the Board of Education, so let's have it here. I think I'm of the opinion that communications for the town requires an employee of some kind. But I'd like to have the discussion about a committee. You know, maybe in the same context that we're talking about the IT, get a steering committee and perhaps we can follow a similar path. Krista.
So not on the same scale. At some point, I'd like to look at the old senior center property as to, is there a home? Is there a need? Is there?
Yep, that's on our list of things to discuss. And there might be actually a budget implication from that conversation.
Okay,
So
that's fine then.
let's try and put that maybe on our next meeting agenda.
Okay.
And I know that the neighbors of that property will be eager to follow our discussions on that. So I know that there were some people that, you know, sort of spearheaded the neighbor contacts that we can reach out to in advance of our discussion to make sure that they're included. At least, you know, in listening posture for our first discussion. Okay. If there's nothing else, then I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Sarah moves, David seconds. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Great. Thank you all very much. Have a good evening.
Okay, see you on the 19th.